But first, as the bushfires have raged and lives have been lost and homes destroyed, former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull has lectured us about the need to urgently move away from coal, to further embrace renewable energy and to lead the world when it comes to climate change action. Tonight we are going to expose the extent of Turnbull's hypocrisy, how he now lectures the Morrison government on one thing but did precisely another when he was the one in charge. There is no bigger culprit than Turnbull when it comes to exiting politics and complaining about what needs to be done by the current government. Someone needs to break it to Malcolm. Mate, you were the Prime Minister. You had more power than anyone else in Australia. You overthrew a sitting PM and had the safety of a 14-seat majority. You had a good relationship with both sides of the media. You had sky-high ratings when you took over. You had the power to persuade the nation. You could have done anything. You could have mounted the case on climate and taken it to an election. You could have stood up in the Blue Room and held a press conference announcing more climate action. But you did not. In fact, you did the exact opposite. When you were PM, you backed coal. You said Australia should not be more ambitious than other countries, and you said action on climate change should not risk jobs or the economy. But now you've recast yourself as a climate change crusader and you're arguing the reverse of all that you stood for as PM. In fact, you're now embracing policies that you once attacked the Greens over as irresponsible. Let's have a look at just how much Turnbull's tune has changed, starting with coal. Turnbull has told us this summer that Australia needs to move away from coal urgently. Quote, "The world must drastically cut its greenhouse gas emissions. Above all, we have to urgently stop burning coal and other fossil fuels," he wrote in Time. Urgently stop burning coal. But in March 2017, Turnbull attacked Greens MP Adam Bandt over the idea that we should stop exporting coal and said it would be too costly for our economy.
Were Australia to stop exporting coal tomorrow, not only would billions of dollars of export revenue be lost, not only would thousands of jobs be lost, but there would be no benefit to the global climate whatsoever, because if our coal exports stopped, they would simply be sourced from other countries.
And again in August of 2018, Turnbull said the same thing, attacking Shorten for turning his back on coal miners.
I'm amazed that the Leader of the Opposition is going to turn his back on all of those coal miners that are represented by his colleagues opposite. Apparently they're involved in a shameful business, and people that work in coal-fired power stations,
members on my right,
according to the Leader of the Opposition, are involved in a shameful business. The Leader of the Opposition has got to get out of this ideological trap set for him by the Greens and get on the side of hard-working Australian families and ensure they have lower power bills.
Amazing, isn't it? And then on the question of whether Australia should be a leader on climate action, now Turnbull says that seeing as we are on the front line of the fire crisis, we should lead the world when it comes to action. In an interview for the BBC just a few days ago, Turnbull said,
"Here in Australia, we are in the front line of the consequences of climate change, and the question many Australians ask and the question the world asks is why is Australia as a nation not also in the front line of taking action to address climate change and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. We are in the front line of climate change, in the consequences. Our country has been on fire, 10 million hectares as you described, dozens of people killed, thousands of properties destroyed, billions of our Australian native fauna killed. It has been a colossal tragedy. But we're in that front line of the consequences. We should be in the front line of action.
But back in February 2017, Turnbull said we should not do more than other countries.
The Labor Party cannot keep living in a parallel universe where you can preach ideological energy policies without any regard to how you are going to deliver reliable, affordable energy and, yes, meet your emission reduction targets, but meet the responsible ones, we entered into in Paris, not just doubling it for no return from any other country. This is ideology.
And then again in October of 2017, Turnbull once again attacked Bill Shorten for wanting to be more ambitious than Paris targets and other nations.
He wants to put a $66 billion tax on Australian families to 2050. It's the cost of his... He wants us to cut our emissions by twice as much as we undertook to do so in Paris. Why would any nation do that? Why would you unilaterally cut your emissions by more than you'd agreed to in concert with others?
On politicising the bushfires and linking them to climate change, Turnbull has been blatant this summer. He slammed the Morrison government's inaction on climate ahead of this unprecedented bushfire season. Have a look at his tweet. His article that he wrote for Time is headed, "Australia's bushfires show climate denials must stop." But back in 2018, when there were bushfires at Tathra on the New South Wales south coast, the Greens claimed the fire was a result of government inaction on climate change. And Turnbull said he was disappointed that the Greens would try to politicise an event like this. He said,
"Can't attribute any particular event, whether it's a flood or a fire or a drought or a storm, to climate change."
And on the question of whether climate change is an ideological issue, Turnbull now says it's not a matter of ideology or values, it's simply a question of physics and science. He says accusations of ideology and climate change have no place. Have a look.
In too many places, the United States in particular and also in Australia, this issue of global warming or global heating has been turned into an ideological issue or a values issue, where in fact it's simply a question of physics.
But in October 2017, Turnbull himself attacked Labor for its ideology on climate change. He said Labor had an ideological pursuit of renewable energy. Ideological. Have a look.
They have demonstrated again and again that they are a threat to affordable energy through their reckless and incompetent prosecution of an ideological agenda in energy. Mr. Speaker, we have seen that they have failed to prioritise affordability and reliability in their ideological pursuit of renewable energy, without any regard to the fact that the sun doesn't shine all the time and the wind doesn't blow all the time.
There are more examples like this. We could go on all night, but don't worry, we won't. This is all a bit much to take, seeing as Turnbull was the Prime Minister. He had more power than anyone else in Australia. Why didn't he argue his case then? Why didn't he try to persuade his colleagues and voters that we should get rid of coal and all of its jobs and instead be a world leader on saving the environment, if that's what he believed? The question is, who is the real Malcolm Turnbull? If the real Turnbull is the one who backs robust action on climate, then it would appear that as PM, he put his personal ambitions over and above the need to act. You can decide why he's changed his tune now. Is it to boost his profile, to make money on the international speaking circuit, or is it what he genuinely believes and he feels guilty he didn't make a difference as PM? When you watch, as we've just done, the stunning extent of Turnbull's hypocrisy and backflips, you can understand why Australians deplore politicians and have a problem trusting what they're saying.